بيدك الخير رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Jazakallah khair for joining on this beautiful occasion and this beautiful week, the week of the Ball Day. And it's been a while since we had an English discussion, and this program is meant to be in English. So I apologize जो लोग उर्दू के लिए यहाँ आए थे उनको थोड़ा सा मुझे माजरत करनी होगी क्योंकि ये प्रोग्राम जो है वो इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग लोगों के लिए organize किया गया है. So the purpose is that I wanted to go over another poem. In the past, we went over Iblis ki Majlis Shura. So if you want to go back and look at the video, I think you will find it helpful, inshallah. If you can't hear me, if I'm not audible, please let me know, and I'll try to fix, unless hopefully nothing's broken. So this poem of Allama Iqbal, which is Tulu-e-Islam, or the Rise of Islam, is the last major poem in Bangedara, and it's a beautiful poem. And he recited this poem in I think it was April of 1923. And I think it's important for us to understand the context of this poem. So this poem was recited at a time when the Ottoman Empire was coming towards an end. So this is when there was a war, and the freedom war that was happening with Turkey. And before the Turkey Republic was established, at the time Mustafa Kemal was considered a hero for the Turks, and that's at the time that was the reality, and you'll see Allama Iqbal even praises Mustafa Kemal in there as well in this poem. But later, as we know, that Mustafa Kemal abolishes the Sultanate, then he abolishes the Khilafat, and he exiles the last Khalifa, which was Sultan Abdul Majid II. And from that, I think up until this point, when Allama wrote this poem, he wasn't. All of that hadn't happened. So obviously, there was a positive view of Mustafa Kemal in the Muslim world. And so, with that in mind, now one of the things that you'll find in this poem, one of the recurring themes, is that Allama consistently and continuously tries to uplift, right, the Muslim Ummah, and he does this throughout his poetry. So the time and the place where Allama is coming, we have to understand that it's a very delicate time for Muslims, and the Muslims had lost control. In India, the Muslims had lost control now through the Ottoman Empire, or the loss of the Ottoman Empire. So Muslims were feeling very down and very disheartened. And Allama comes, with hope, and he comes with a message of hope. And this is part of that. And he's using these events to bring about hope into the Muslims. But also we have to keep in mind that whenever we have some element of hope, and whenever we try to understand that there is something that's happening that may benefit us, we oftentimes lose focus of what's on the inside. So throughout this poem, you'll see Allama continuously reminds us that, look, if you want to retain this status of Muslims, if you want to benefit from this, if you want to grow from this, if you want to continue, then you have to work on your own self. If your own khudi is not in control, if your own khudi is not in aligned with the values of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then all this is going to be useless. Okay, so we'll start, inshallah. Bismillah. So he starts out the first stanza with Dalil subh roshan hai sitaron ki tunak tabi ufuk se aftab bara gaya dore giran khabi. So he's saying that the dimming of the stars, and beautiful metaphors and analogies that he'll use throughout his poetry, the dimming of the stars is the sign of the morning, is a sign of a bright morning, right? So when you see, if you notice on the sky, as the sun begins to rise, the stars begin to dim. So he's trying to show us, and throughout his poetry, multiple lines, that just because something seems like it's coming down, just because something appears to be at a loss, it doesn't mean that we're losing. It means that there's hope. There's always hope. A believer always has hope. The Quran tells us, right? La taqnatu min rahmatillah. Don't lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's saying that the sun is emerging from the horizon, and it's leaving behind the time of deep slumber. right? Now, the Muslim ummah was in this deep sleep, and that's what led to the decline. But the rise of the sun and dimming of stars is telling us it's time to wake up, and there's new hope. गुरु के मुर्दे मशरक में खून जिंदगी दौड़ा समझ सकते नहीं इस राज को सीना फाराबी. So he's saying that the blood of life runs through the weak veins of the east, right? Meaning there's still life there. And he's saying this is a secret that philosophers can't understand. I think this is a kind of a stark difference between Iqbal's philosophy, Iqbal's approach, and others like Sina and Farabi. He doesn't. I don't think in this line he's trying to take a direct hit on in Ibn Sina or Farabi, but I think what he's trying to say is that these matters can't be understood through philosophy alone, right? These are more beyond philosophical matters. Then he says, मुसलमा को मुसलमा कर दिया तूफान मगरिब ने तला तुम्हारे दरिया ही से है गोहर की सिराबी. So, this is another theme from Allama's poetry that you can see. He says that what makes Muslim a Muslim, what brings a strong aspect of Islam and submission and being truthful to Islam for a Muslim is going to be something that opposes it, right? So oftentimes we think that for us to be Muslims, for us to stay Muslims, we have to have an environment of Islam. We have to have Islam everywhere. In fact, anything and everything is evidenced, is witnessed, is proved by the opposite of it, right? So how do we know good is when there's evil, right? How do we know evil when there's good? So opposites. And so for Islam and for Muslims um, to be Muslims in this world, we have to have kufr, right? We have to have disbelief, and that's how we know that there is iman. That's how we know that there's Islam. So he's saying that the storm of the West has turned a Muslim into a true Muslim, and he's giving this metaphor. He says that when you have strong winds in the sea, that is what forces the production of pearls, right? Pearls are produced when there's storm. So there's something good that comes because of a storm. Then he says, "Ata momin ko phir dargah-e haq se hone wala hai, shikoh-e turkmani zehn hindi nutq arabi." And he's using this because it's very fascinating. He's saying that Muslims have had all of these experiences and have benefited from it, right? So he's saying it seems like the believer is about to be bestowed once again from the court of haq, the absolute truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is it? The glory of the Turks, the intelligence of the Indians, and the eloquence of the Arabs, right? Because Muslims had ruled all of these areas, so it seems appropriate that Muslims would benefit from those aspects. And I think if you look at, even generally speaking, like sociologically speaking, every area, every type of people have their own benefit, have their own qualities that they bring to Islam, to the ummah, to the millah, right? And then he says, "असर कुछ ख्वाब का गुंजू में बाकी है तो ए बुलबुल नवारा तल खतर में जन चुजोके नगमा कमियाबी." That if the effect of still sleep still remains in the flower buds, then O nightingale, meaning, and this nightingale metaphor he usually uses for himself, right? So he's maybe reminding himself or reminding those who preach, those who are in this in with the intention of wanting to preach. He's saying that if you feel that the flower buds are still sleeping on nightingale, then make your voice louder and harsher, right? Talkhtarmi. If your song is not melodious enough for them, meaning make it louder so they can hear it, so people can wake up. तड़प सहने चमन में आशियां में शाखसारों में जुदा पारे से हो सकती नहीं तकदीर सीमा भी. He's saying because, and then this is the nature of existence, nature of human beings, that the movement, and this is like Iqbal's philosophy of movement, you can say it too, right? The idea that everything has motion, commotion, anxiety, everything has movement within itself. He says that he's saying to the bulbul as well. He's saying that, look, this movement that exists or moving about in the sehne chaman, in the ashia, in the shakhsa, in the courtyard, nest, in the branches, because you cannot remove the destiny of quicksilver from the mercury. The mercury is going to move, right? Its nature is to move. Then he says, वो चश्मे पाक भी क्यों जीनत बरगिस्तवान देखे नजर आती है जिसको मर्द गाजी की जिगर ताबी. Right? He's talking to the Muslims and he's saying that um, don't get um, sidetracked, don't get um, distracted with what you see, because a pure seeing eye, right? The Chashme Pak being a pure seeing vision, a visionary focus, looks does not look at the decor of the horse's armor. It looks as the rider. It looks as the passion that it exists in the person who's riding the horse, right? We don't get caught up in, oh my God, like look at this beauty of it. So he's reminding us that don't get caught up in the matters of this world. Rather, look at what you can learn from it. Look at the passion that you can take from this dunya, from the people of this world. ज़मीर लाला में रोशन चराग़ आरज़ू कर दे चमन के ज़र्रे ज़र्रे को शहीद जुस्तजू कर दे. So he's reminding us that it is time that we light the flame of desire in the heart of a tulip. And what that does is it creates in every particle of the garden this search for passion, right? This justaju, this passion that we need so that we can rise and we can learn and we can benefit from what's happening to us. Then he says, सरश के चश्म मुस्लिम में है नीसा का असर पैदा खलीलुल्लाह के दरिया में होंगे फिर गौहर पैदा. This is stanza number 2 now. He says that the tears in the eyes of the Muslim has the effect of a spring rain. Like again, look at what he does. This is such a beautiful quality of Allama, may Allah bless his soul, is that he gives us hope even in the most gloomiest situations and examples. So here he's saying that when the tear of the eye of the believer is crying, it is similar to a spring rain. And what does a spring rain do? It brings life back to the garden. It brings life back to the trees. And so he says that because of that, the pearls will once more produce in the rivers of Ibrahim. The river of Ibrahim would be this millet, right? He said, those tears that are coming down because of the loss that we're enduring is going to result in people rising and people coming about that are, that are going to bring value to this ummah, to this millah. किताब मिल्लत बेजा की फिर शिराज़ बंदी है ये शाख हाशमी करने को है फिर बरगो बर पैदा. He says that the radiant nation is binding the book once more, right? They're going back to the teachings of Quran once more. And this millat beza is like radiant, right? It comes from like yad beza, the hand which was radiant to Musa alayhi salam, the miracle that was given to him. So Allama uses that word beza for Muslims, for the millat frequently. And he says this Hashemite branch is once again ready to produce flowers and petals, right? Even though, again, look at the situation, what's happening at the time, and even now, the Muslims are coming down, and their status in this dunya is coming down. But Allama is saying, no, it's going to help produce more. This is something good for us. So then he gives examples, right? And this is where he's praising Mustafa Kamal. Remember, again, Mustafa Kamal at that time was considered a hero because he helped fight the war and win the war of independence. So he says, Rabuda Turk Shirazi dile Tabriz Kabul Ra Sabah karti hai buए gul se apna hum safar paida. He's saying that the Turk of Shiraz, which is the Mustafa Kamal, Turkish Shirazi, and he borrows this line, I believe, from Hafiz, Hafiz Shirazi's poetry, I think so. He says that, yes, from Hafiz. He says that Mustafa Kamal has overpowered the hearts of Iran and Afghanistan, right? Tabriz is Iran and Kabul, obviously, is Afghanistan. He says this morning breeze makes the roses scent its companion on the road, right? So this is giving us hope. This next line, which is oftentimes in one of the most powerful and famous lines of Allama, अगर उस्मानियों पर कोहे गम टूटा तो क्या गम है कि खून सद हजार अंजुम से होती है सहर पैदा, right? He's saying that if the mountain of grief has fallen on the Ottomans, on the Khilafat Usmaniya, then don't worry, don't lament, don't be sad, because if you look again, he's making you focus on the system around you. If you look at the world around you, after 100,000 stars die, then it gives birth to a hopeful dawn. For dawn to come about, for the sun to rise, for the light to come back, these 100,000 stars have to die, right? And if you look at the morning, the reddish hue that we see in the morning, he's using that as well. The khune sad hazaran. This is like the blood, right? Almost like the blood of 100,000 stars in the morning that is then giving birth to this hopeful dawn. जहाँ बानी से है दुश्वार तर कारे जहाँ बीनी जिगर खूं हो तो चश्मे दिल में होती है नजर पैदा. He says, look, we had conquered the world. Okay, so that part we did. And people might think that's a difficult thing to do because in order to conquer, you need power, you need army, you need, all like forces, men. But he says, no, far difficult than the conquest of the world is envisioning the world. It's having that vision, that far seeing eye, having the ability to intellectually govern the world, not physically govern the world. But he says, but how do we get that? If there is blood in our heart, if there is that passionate, bloodied heart, then we can find the visionary eye from it. Right? It has to go through that process. It has to be crushed. It has to have passion for it to then come to that point. And then another line which is oftentimes quoted, हजारों साल नरगिस अपनी बेनूरी पे रोती है बड़ी मुश्किल से होता है चमन में दीदावर पैदा. Right? A beautiful line. He says, sometimes it takes 1,000 years. A narcissist cries for 1,000 years on the lack of its sight. Then, after much difficulty, the garden will give birth to a visionary. Right? So, this process of producing visionaries, this process of coming to a point where people rise and people are intellectually able to govern and intellectually able to bring some value to the world, it doesn't happen overnight. This takes 1,000 years. That's something we have to recognize, right? Oftentimes, when we think of things like tabdili, we think it's an overnight thing. The process requires a lot of hard work. It requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of external struggle as well as internal struggles. Because if you bring about change within outside, right, the government changes, the system changes, but people, their hearts, their character, their akhlaq is still not healthy, then that change will not have any effect, for a long time. It might have a short term effect, but it won't have a long term effect. And then he says, नवा पैरा हो ए बुलबुल की हो तेरे तरन्नुम से कबूतर के तने नाजुक में शाही का जिगर पैदा. Right? So he's saying, sing your songs, O bulbul, O nightingale, so that your melody, your songs can do what? Can take a falcon, like a dove, like which is a kabutar, and its weak body, its delicate body, but it can produce the heart of a shaheen, a heart of a falcon. So keep singing those songs, keep reminding. And I mean, some of these lines, when Allama's lines, somebody the other day was asking in social media, like, how do, like, I read Allama's poetry and it doesn't have an effect. You have to reflect on it, right? Some of these lines are like very deep and it takes time and you have to apply it to your own life. So, he's saying, keep singing, keep reminding, because that reminder may produce that heart of a shaheen inside of the body of the kabutar, of the dove. तेरे सीने में है पोशीदा राज़े ज़िंदगी कह दे मुसलमान से हदीसे सोज़ो साज़ ज़िंदगी कह दे. He said, speak on the hidden secrets of the life which are buried in your chest. He's again, Bulbul, oftentimes he's talking about himself, right? And he said, give the Muslims the account of the warmth and the melody of life itself. Like, tell the Muslims, what is life about, right? What is your existence about? Give those secrets out to the Muslims so the Muslims can learn and benefit from it. Okay, so the next stanza, very beautiful start of the stanza, because again, with each stanza, when he ends it, then he's setting the stage for the next one. So he says, what is the status of a Muslim? खुदाए लम यजिल का दस्ते कुदरत तू जुबान तू है यकी पैदा करे गाफिल के मगलूबे गुमान तू है. He says, look at who you are, look at your status, and look at your potential. He says, you are the mighty hand, dast qudrat. You are the tongue of who? Of Khuda, not just any God, but the eternal God. Lam yazil, right? A God that has no end, a God that has no beginning. You are the hand, the mighty hand. That's the qudrat. Like you are the ones that's changing the qudrat from on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're the one that is the representative of God. You're the zuban, you're the tongue, the speech of God in this world. And he says, based on that, be certain, have certainty inside of you, have yaqeen. Don't lose that hope, don't lose that faith. Don't be heedless because you've overcome with doubt, right? What makes someone do things that are powerful, that are divine, is yaqeen, is this internal certainty. And unfortunately, nowadays, we suffer from lack of certainty. And lack of certainty, I mean, as a psychologist, I can tell you, is anxiety, right? When people have anxiety, what do? They take the easy route. If I have anxiety, I can't speak in front of people, so I will hide behind. I won't say anything. If I have anxiety that I can't, I can't complete this course, I can't get a degree, I will keep doubting myself. So he's saying, no, bring yaqeen. Have faith within yourself, because you are the hand and the speech of that God which has no end. And then look at this. He says, परे है चरख़ नीली फाम से मंजिल मुसलमा की सितारे जिसकी गद्द राह हों वो कारवां तू है. He's saying that the station, the state, the status of a believer is not confined to this dunya. It's not even confined to the sky, right? Right now, Elon Musk and the idea of like, let's go to Mars and this. He's saying your status is not even confined to this sky. You are the caravan that, when the caravan leaves and there's dust that's left behind, right? He's saying that you're the caravan that leaves the stars as a dust behind. Like you're way beyond this dunya, you're way beyond the skies. Think beyond this world. Don't get caught up in this dunya. Don't get caught in the illusion of this world, because at the end of the day, your status and your state is beyond this dunya. Why? Because makan fani, maki ani, azal tera, abad tera. This dunya, it will come to an end, right? Kullu man aliha fan. That's we know that from the Quran. It will come to an end. The people that live here, they will perish. But for you, because you are the dast qudrat and zuban of Allah, Khuda lam yazil, azal tera, abad tera. Like you are the beginning. The beginning is yours, and the end is yours. The eternity is yours, and infinity is yours. खुदा का आखिरी पैगाम है तू जावेदां तू है. You're the final message of God. And if the God is lam yazil, then you are eternal too. Your existence, meaning what you bring to this world, what you do, and the energy, the creative energy that you bring to this dunya, it is eternal. हिना बंदे उरू से लाल है खूने जिगर तेरा तेरी निस्बत बराहीमी है मामारे जहां तू है. Right? He's now attributing us to Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's saying your heart blood is like the decorative henna on the tulip bride, right? Your passion, right? Because it brings hope. And he says, what you do is you're attributed to Ibrahim alayhi salam. You're from the millat of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you are the one who builds this world, who creates this world, right? Because if you look at even the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam right now, right? I mean, Christians, Jews, Muslims, like Ibrahim alayhi salam is praised by all major religions. Most people, if you look at the prevalence of religion in this dunya, most people attributed themselves in one way or to the other to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So he built this world from nothing, basically. तेरी फितरत अमी है मुमकिनात जिंदगानी की जहां के जोहर मुजमर का गोया इम्तिहान तू है. He says your nature is trustworthy of all possibilities of life. You are like the test for the hidden qualities of the world. Like look at the possibility and the potential you have. जहान आब गिल से आलम जावेद की खातिर नबूवत जिस साथ जिसको ले गई वो अरमगां तू है. He says from the world of water and clay to the realm of eternity. Like the prophethood, because what is prophethood? Prophethood connects the creation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It connects the physical world to the metaphysical world. It connects the finite world to the infinite world. So he's saying that the prophethood took with it, you are the gift that prophethood took with it from the world of water and clay to the realm of eternity. ये नुक्ता सरगुज़श्त मिल्लत बैज़ा से है पैदा कि अक़वाम ज़मीन एशिया का पासबां तू है. So he's saying, look, now the next line actually is connected to this. So he's saying that this principle stems from the story of the radiant nation. You are the guardian of the communities of the land of Asia. right? Asia. But then he says something very beautiful, because he says, look, you might have control over certain lands in Asia, but your realm, your control does not end here. And if you want to be the leader of the world, here's what you have to do. Sabak phir pad, sadakat ka, adalat ka, shujaat ka. Remind yourself. This goes back to what I said earlier, right? You can have control over the world, physical control, but unless we change within ourselves what we need to do, unless we work on our character, unless we perfect our khudi, all that control won't matter. So he's saying, if you want to be the leader of the dunya, then remind yourself once again, learn once more the lessons of truth, justice, and valor. Sadaqat, adalat, and shuja'at. Why? Because liya jayega tujhse kam dunya ki imamat ka, that you will be asked to lead the entire world once more, just like you were asked before. And then he's going to talk about later too, like what brought that quality in Muslims in the past, and how we can bring that back again in the future. And he says, look, yahi maqsood fitrat hai, yahi ramz Musalmani. This is the fate of your nature. This is the secret of being a Muslim. What that is that ukhuwat ki jahangiri, muhabbat ki farawani, universal brotherhood, abundant love, right? That when we look at each others as Muslims, we feel that love, the unity, the brotherhood. That we don't um, we don't differentiate because someone is different from us, because we're part of one millat, we're part of one ummah. Bhutan ne rang khun ko todkar millat mein gum ho jaye. He says, break these idols of color and blood. You come from this qom, and you come from this country and this that. No, he says, break away from all of that. Na turani rahe baki, na irani na afghani. So that neither a Turanian is left, and the word Turani can refer to the ancient Asian language. So some certain parts of Asia, like Turkestan and modern day Turkey, you can say as well. Na Irani na Afghani, neither Irani nor Afghani. Like, don't get caught up in that. And that was one of the reasons why Muslims had a downfall, right? Because they got caught up in that. The Arabs betrayed the Ottoman Empire, and all these things that happened. This led to the status of the Muslims in the world that we saw, that he was seeing, Allama, at the time. मियाँ शाखसारा सोहबत मुर्गे चमन कब तक तेरे बाजू में है परवाज शाहीन कोहस्तानी. He says, look, how long will you remain in the company of birds on the branches of trees? Like, to be to get caught up in these small matters, like of home and country and language and color. These are things that small birds do. He says, you're not a small bird of sitting on some branch, right, in the company of birds. Your wings have the ability to fly like the falcon of the mountains. You're shahini kohustani. Like, then he, in other like poem, he says, shahini shahilo lak hai tu, tera johar hai nuri pak hai tu, faroge deed aflak hai tu, तेरे सैदे ज़बू अफरिश्ता हूर के शाहीने शही लौलाक है तू. Like, you are the falcon of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can't be caught up in these small matters and these small issues of, like, oh, color and nasl and all these things. गुमान गुमा आबाद हस्ती में यकीन मर्द मुसलमान का बयाबां की शब तारीख में क़िंदील रहबानी. He says, the certainty of a believer, the yaqeen that comes inside of a mu'min, of a believer, lives in the existence of a doubtful world. Meaning, you, again, like I said before, the presence of certainty, everything exists because of its opposites, right? The presence of certainty and yaqeen comes from guma, comes from doubts, come from uncertainty, right? So you can't have certainty unless you have uncertainty. He says that that's where the believer's certainty lives, is in the world full of doubts. And then it is like a candle of the monk in the dark night of the wilderness, right? Because if there's dark night, if there's wilderness, that one small teeny tiny candle light then brings about that light. Then its existence is valued, and it can be seen. And then he says, look at the past. Look at how मिटाया कैसर व किसरा के इस्तबदाद को जिसने, वो क्या था जोर हैदर फक्र बूजर सिद्क सलमानी. He says, what was it that brought down the Caesar and the Cyrus, right? Caesar was the Roman emperor and Cyrus was the Persian emperor. What brought down the tyranny of the Caesar and Cyrus? It was nothing. It was the power of Hyder, right? The physical power of Hyder. It was the asceticism of Abu Dhar Ghafari, right? The faqr of Abu Dhar Ghaffari radiallahu an, and it was the truthful nafs of Salman al-Farsi, right? At the end of the day, that those basic qualities that we need inside of our akhlaq, inside of our character, that's what brings down these tyrannies. That's what brings down these idols in the world, right? Again, right now, Muslims oftentimes look for, oh, we need leaders and we need this and we need khilafat. We need to bring those qualities within ourselves. Those people who lived in the past, the Sahaba had the Prophet ﷺ, but we have the legacy of the Prophet. We have the Quran, we have the Hadith. We know what the Prophet has taught us, so we can bring those qualities within ourselves, and that can then translate into something bigger, something beyond. हुए एहरार मिल्लत जाद अब पैमा किस तजम्मुल से तमाशाई शगाफ दर से हैं सदियों के जिंदानी, right? He's like the what made those people, right? So those ihrar millat, like how were those free men became travelers on the path? What majesty, what the Jamul made them that? People throughout the ages have been looking for that answer, and they've been. So he's giving this another beautiful metaphor. He says, while the prisoners of the centuries peek at them as bystanders through the crack of the door. You know how when you want to know what's happening inside a room, you just crack open a door, you try to see, like I wonder how this person got through that. I wonder how what made them achieve this. So he said all of the people in the past have been looking for that. सुबात ज़िंदगी ईमान मुहकम से है दुनिया में कि अलमानी से भी पाइंदा तर निकला है तूरानी. He's saying the stability of life comes in the world through firm belief. Again, going back to yaqeen, right? And he's using the word iman muhkam, right? Very firm belief. That's what brings stability to life. And he said, you can see that in the example because Germans were more powerful than the Turks, right? But he says, but because of their certainty, because of their belief, I mean, people, especially now in Pakistan, like are very, and in the world are were very like fond of Ertugrul, right? So if you look at even the history of Khilafat Usmaniyah, how it came, it was a small qabila, small people, but how did they come to, have this empire was because of their certainty, their yaqeen. So he's saying that here as well, that even in the time of Iqbal, the Turanians have become stronger than even the Germans because of what? Because they're iman muhkam. And then he says, look, you know, that yaqeen, the difference it can make. जब इस अंगारा खाकी में होता है यकीन पैदा तो कर लेता है ये बालों परे रूहुल अमी पैदा. That when this ember of ashes, this angara khaki, right, has certainty, brings about certainty within himself or herself, then he brings forth the mighty wings of the trustworthy soul of Jibreel alayhi salam. Meaning, see, this is again, human beings have the capacity, are more valued than angels, right? Because a human being at its highest potential with yaqeen is more valuable, can be more powerful than even he's saying here in the mighty wings of Jibreel, of angels. But what's the problem? Why is yaqeen not coming? Right? So he's giving the answer in the next line. He says, गुलामी में नाकाम आती हैं शमशीरें न तदबीरें जो हो ज़ौक़ यकीन पैदा तो कट जाती हैं जंजीरें. He says, if you're going to be a slave, right? And here, it's not just physical slavery, right? Physical slavery hasn't been around for a while, right? That I mean, at a mass level, that doesn't exist anymore. He's talking about intellectual slavery, because what intellectual slavery does, you can be a physical slave, right? You can be, for example, in prison. If you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, he says the most free he felt, the most valued he felt, or the time that he spent valuably was actually when he was in jail. So you can be a prisoner, you can be a physical slave and still have yaqeen and still have those qualities. But he's talking about intellectually. When you're intellectually enslaved, because intellectual enslavement doesn't come from outside, it comes from within your own self, right? It is a byproduct of what we do to our own selves and how we take external factors and become slaves to them. So right now, like the Western culture, for example, the Eastern countries like Pakistan and other Muslim countries are enslaved by the Western cultures. We try to follow the Western culture. We try to, imitate, right? So he's saying that if you're in that state, then neither planning, nor swords, nor fighting, nor physical, none of that will work. None of that will help. But what will help is the certainty, right? is a certainty, the recognition that this is what we're going through and we need to break from it and we can do it. But if you bring that certainty, if जो हो ज़ोक़ यकीन पैदा, if the perception of certainty is born, then the chains are shattered. तो कट जाती हैं ज़ंजीरें. And then he says, look, again, look at your potential. Look how much you can do. कोई अंदाज़ा कर सकता है उसके ज़ोर बाज़ू का, निगाहे मर्द मोमन से बदल जाती हैं तकदीरें. He says, can anyone even imagine the power that is contained in his arms when the mere glance of a believer can change destinies, right? He says, when you have a firm belief, when you have a grounded aqidah, when you have this yaqeen inside of you, that your eyes, your look itself, your glance can change destinies. If your glance can do that much, can you imagine what your arm can do? Can you imagine how much power that your arm contains, right? Again, what that requires is yaqeen inside of us. विलायत पादशाही इल्म अशिया की जहांगीरी ये सब क्या हैं फ़कत एक नुक्ता ईमान की तफसीरें. He said, if you look at the technology or the advancement in this world, whether it's country, whether it's governance, whether it's universal knowledge of matters, they're nothing but simple commentaries on one point of faith, right? They all come down to iman. They all come to the one point, which is that do you have faith or not? Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe strongly within what capacity you have or not? That's what it comes down to. And he says, but what happens in dunya is this, बराहीमी नज़र पैदा मगर मुश्किल से होती है, हवस छुप छुप के सीनों में बना लेती हैं तस्वीरें. So he says, it's very hard to develop that Abrahamic vision, that Ibrahimi nazar. Why? Because desires continue to paint pictures secretly in the hearts, right? So we live in a world that is filled with desires, that caters to our desires. So we're caught up in wanting things like, for example, a comfortable life, a better degree, more money, more children, beautiful spouse, a status, power, right? These are all butan e as he calls it in another poem, right? These are all idols that we create, within this dunya. He says, because our desires create these idols and these, pictures, it's hard to develop this Abrahamic vision, right? And it's beautiful how he's using this term here because he's using Ibrahimi Nazar, right? And he's talking about tasweerein because, an idol paints a picture. Like you're looking at a vision of like how I can be the most productive, how I can be the best Muslim I can be. And then in front of you comes something else, right? Maybe you're thinking about what good food you can eat today. Maybe you're thinking about how you can make more money or how you can, you know, um, do something else that is related to this world. And he says, तमीज़ बंदा व आका फसाद आदमीयत है. हज़र ए चीर दस्ता सख्त हैं फितरत की ताज़ीरें. Right? So he's saying that when you create a difference between a slave and a master, this is a corruption of mankind. All people are created equal. He says, beware, O powerful one, harsh are the consequences of nature. When you go with the system of this dunya, like if you're chasing if you're chasing wealth, if you're chasing all of these idols that he's talking about, then what happens is that it creates this difference between people. Then you don't see this unity and brotherhood. Then you don't recognize that we're all part of one ummah, one millah. We're all the creation, and our job is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We just look at what the differences that exist inside of us because we want to overcome, right? People who are rich, I mean, all the people, if you look at like the CEO of Amazon, for example, if you look at CEO of Tesla, all these bigger rich people, they don't care about other people. They don't care about workers. They have no concern for what's happening in the world. If there's a war happening and the whole world is saying, oh, Russia is being unfair to Ukraine, they will do business with Russia if they want to, because at the end of the day, for them, there is a difference between Aqa and Banda, right? What he's talking about here, the slave, the lowly individual, and the master, right? So he's saying you can't get through that if you're caught up in this worldly matters. But he reminds us. He said, at the end of the day, hakikat ek hai har shay ki, khaki ho ke nuri ho. That the nature, the reality of everything is the same. There's only one reality. Whether you are from this world or from the light, right? From the nur. Lahu khurshid ka tapke agar zarre ka dil cheere. That you know Even the blood of the sun will drip if you tear the heart of an atom. Right? If an atom splits, it has so much energy. At the end of the day, we all have. If you go to the microscopic level, we all have same reality. We all have the same nature. But how do we move forward? यकीन मुहकम अमल पे हम मोहब्बत फातह आलम. जहाद जिंदगानी में हैं ये मर्दों की शमशीरें. He says that for the men, for those who are, who want to fight, who want to struggle, their swords in the battlefield are what? Are yaqeen muhkam, firmness and certainty. Amal pe ham, consistency in action. And muhabbat, that's fatih alam, love that conquers the world, universal love. Those three qualities are what you need if you want to fight through this battle of life. And then he has this Farsi line here: Chebaid mard ra tab'i bulande mashrabe nabe dile garme nigahe pak bine jaan betabe. Right? What else does a man need? Lofty spirit, pure character, a warm heart, a pure-sighted eye, and a restless soul. Right? He's giving all of these qualities that we can all instill within ourselves, and that make us not only a better individual, but also allow us to overcome the difficulties of this dunya. And then he says, "Ukabi shan se jhapte the jo bebalo par nikle, sitare sham ke khoon shafaq mein doob kar nikle." Those who attacked with falcon splendor, who had all this power and might at the time, this was the Germans, right? Came out with their wings plucked. Whereas the stars of the evening, the Turks, emerged from the blood of twilight redness, right? They came out as victors. हुए मदफून दरिया जेर दरिया तैरने वाले तमाचे मौज के खाते थे जो बनकर गोहर निकले. Those who swam under the sea were buried by the sea, meaning they had the technology to do that. But those who fought with the waves, who were hit by the waves, who were whacked by the waves, arose like the pearl, because that's how pearl comes into existence. Okay. गुबार रह गुजर हैं कीमिया पर नाज था जिनको जबीन खाक पर रखते थे जो इक्सीर कर निकले. It's again a beautiful choice of words. He's saying those who prided themselves with their alchemy, right? With their kimia. Kimia also is used not just for chemistry and science here, but also the art of turning dust into gold, right? He's talking about again the Germans. Those who were priding themselves in that became the dust of the road. At the end of the day, they became the dust. And those who put their heads on the dust, those who did sajda, those who prostrated on the dust, they rose like the makers of elixirs. They were the ones that came out stronger. हमारा नर्म रो कासिद प्याम जिंदगी लाया खबर देती थी जिनको बिजलियां वो बेखबर निकले. That the slow pacing emissary brought the news of life. They were the ones that brought back the life. They were the victors. But whereas those who were informed by lightning turned out to be uninformed. Right? Again, he's comparing the Germans and the Turks here. हरम रुसवा हुआ पीरे हरम की कम निगाही से जवाना ने ततारी किस कदर साहिब नजर निकले. He's saying that the Arabs betrayed the Turks, right? So the noble sanctuary was disgraced by the lack of foresight of its protectors. They had kam nigahi. But then the Tatari Joanan, the Turks, they turned out to be such men of vision, right? ज़मीन से नूरिया ने आसमां परवाज कहते थे ये खाकी जिंदतर पाइंदतर ताबिंदतर निकले. The ones who soared to and lit the skies, the angels from earth would say that these dust particles, like these, again, the Turks, turned out to be more lively, more stable, and more enlightened. Right? Even though we're the ones who soared to the sky and light the skies, look at these dust particles, right? These humans and what they are capable of doing. And then he says another beautiful line which is often quoted: "जहाँ में अहले ईमा सूरत खुर्शीद जीते हैं, इधर डूबे उधर निकले, उधर डूबे इधर निकले." Right? That in this world, the people of faith, they live like the sun. Right? And if you look at the sun, in one area, like if I'm in Chicago and the sun is rising, at that time the sun is setting. At that time, the sun is rising elsewhere. Right now, it's 11 o'clock in Chicago and it's like 10 p.m. at night in Pakistan. So the sun rose a few hours ago here, and the sun set a few hours ago in Pakistan. So he's saying in the in existence in the world, the people of faith live like the sun, that it looks like it's setting here, but it rises elsewhere. So when they have a downfall, when they are hit with a calamity, or they have some kind of a loss, they come back with some kind of a gain, right? This is kind of like how the system works. And again, what's required for that? Yaqeen afraad ka sarmaya hai, tamir millat hai. The certainty of individuals, the certainty, the yaqeen. This is the theme again and again in this poetry, right? The yaqeen is what builds the building of this nation. What is the basic building block? What is necessary as a foundation of the building of this millet, right? यही क़ुव्वत है जो सूरत करे तक़दीर मिल्लत है. This is the power that paints the fate of the community, right? This, if something is led without yaqeen, without certainty, then it's bound to fail. But if you have certainty, then you are bound to succeed, right? And then again, he's bringing the attention back to us, who we are, right? He says, "You are what? Tu raze kun faka hai, apni aankhon par ayan ho ja, khudi ka razda ho ja, khuda ka tarjuma ho ja." He says to the Muslims, "You're the secret of kun fakan, kun fayakun, be it is. You are the secret of it. Become apparent to your own self. Become, the idea kun fayakun, be and it is, right?" He says, then do that to your own self, right? Become apparent to your own self. Uh, be able to see for your own self, your own capacity, and what creative energy that exists inside of you. Be aware of your khudi, become the representative of God. Khuda ka tarjuma ho ja. हवस ने कर दिया है टुकड़े टुकड़े नोए इंसान को उखुवत का बयां हो जा मोहब्बत की जुबां हो जा. Says greed and hawas, unfortunately, hirs and hawas has split humanity into many pieces, right? Some people are greedy about status, some are money, some land, power, etc. Become the spokesman of brotherhood and be the language of love. ये हिंदी वो खुरासानी, ये अफगानी वो तूरानी, तू ए शर्मिंदा ए साहिल उछल कर बेकरां हो जा. Okay, so he's saying that, um, like, on one hand you have the Indian, on the other hand you have the Khurasani, and on one hand you have the Afghani, on the other hand you have the Turani. He says, "Oh, the one who loads the shore, rise up and become boundless." Right? Like, you're the type of person who is like the wave. It's not the Sahil, right? You live in the creative energy that exists inside of a wave. He said, rise up and become boundless. Like, don't bind yourself to the shore because you don't like it. That's not your nature as a believer. गुबार आलूदा ए रंगो नसब हैं बालों पर तेरे, तू ए मुर्गे हरम उड़ने से पहले परफशा हो जा. He says, unfortunately, because of this racism, this sectarianism that exists in this dunya, your wings have become dirty, like dirty with filth, because of colors and races. He says, before you rise and before you start floating, soaring above, O bird of the sanctuary, right? Murghe haram. Again, he's attributing our existence back to Allah, back to the Prophet ﷺ. Shake your wings, get this dust off, stop thinking about sectarianism, stop dividing the Muslims based on rang and nasab, and then you're able to go and fly. But if you have that dirt on your wing, then you're not going to be able to fly high. खुदी में डूब जा गाफिल ये सिर्र जिंदगानी है निकल कर हल्का शामो सहर से जाविदा हो जा. Says, immerse yourself in khudi. Take a deep dive in your own self, O heedless one. This is the secret of life. Come out of the slavery of day and night and become immortal. Right? What does he mean by day and night slavery? He means like this system that you're caught up in, right? Unfortunately, that's how we're living. Like, what's going to happen tomorrow? How am I going to live my life? What happens when my children get older? How can I benefit more? We're the slaves of day and night. Whereas in other poems he says that, jahan tere liye hai, tu jahan ke liye nahi, right? That this world is made for you. You're not made for this world, right? So go beyond that, and become immortal. मुसाफिर जिंदगी में सीरत फौलाद पैदा कर शबिस्तान मोहब्बत में हरीरो पर नया हो जा. Establish the trait of steel on this battlefield of life. Like, become strong, right? Become firm, become certain. In the bed chamber of love, become soft as silk, right? So he says, and this goes back to the ayah in the Quran, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Muhammad Rasulullah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ وَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. That Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him, they are strong and firm when it comes to disbelief, but they are kind and they are merciful amongst each other. So he says a believer has to have both of these qualities, right? When it comes time to stand up for injustice, stand up for truth, you become firm. But that firmness and harshness doesn't have to be when you are amongst each other, when you're talking, when you're connecting with each other, as part of this ummah and this millah. Then he says, गुजर जा गुजर जा बन के सीले तुंद रो को हो बयाबां से गुलिस्तान राह में आए तो जुए नगमा ख्वां हो जा. That move past the mountains and the desert like a stormy river. When a river comes, and we saw it in Pakistan when the flood happens, right? Then when a river comes after a storm, it doesn't really stop anymore, it just keeps going. He said, be like that river. If faced by gardens in the path, become melodious stream for them. But that doesn't mean, again, you have to be harsh, right, all the time. That when you come across something that's a small, beautiful garden, then you have to calm yourself down, right? You have to have both of these qualities. तेरे इल्मो मोहब्बत की नहीं है इंतहा कोई, नहीं है तुझसे बढ़कर साज फितरत में नवा कोई. There is absolutely no limit to your knowledge and your love, right? It's unlimited. It's there's no bound. There's nothing binding it. No one is a better singer of the song of nature than you, right? So bring those qualities within yourself. And the next stanza, he says, "Abhi tak aadmi se de zaboon shehr yari hai." Again, he's talking about like, unfortunately, the reality of what's happening, right? How the world is right now. He says, even now, mankind is like a prey to governing of cities, to imperialism. Qiyamah hai ki insan noe insan ka shikari hai. He's like, how disastrous is that humans are killing other humans? To take someone's life is a very unnatural thing, right? He says, how disastrous is that you are killing people just so that you can govern more cities and control more land. This is what's happening now. नजर को खीरा करती है चमक तहजीब हाजिर की, ये सुनना ही मगर झूठे निगों की रिज़ाकारी है. The glitter of modern traditions blind the sight, right? These modern imperialistic traditions, they are going to blind our sight and what we're supposed to do. This craftsmanship, however, is the mosaic of false jewels, right? This isn't true development. This isn't true power, true might. This isn't true potential. This is just, again, an illusionary. In this case, झूठे निगों की रिज़ाकारी है. It's the mosaic of false jewels. वो हिकमत नाज था जिस पर खिरदमंदान मगरिब को हवस के पंजाए खूनी में तेगे कारजारी है. That wisdom in which the Westerners took pride in, their thought leaders were proud of, that we have that wisdom, that vision, that enlightenment. He says, unfortunately, it is a justification of a sword in the bloody grip of greed, right? And this is what's happening now. It's capitalism. I mean, if you look at the system right now, right? Everybody, it's all about, comes down to more money, whether it's governments, whether it's army, military establishments, or what do you call them, industrial complexes. All of them, unfortunately, brings it down to what? Greed. And they justify all of these things, and even the wisdom of the West, right? It's justified through, like, if you look at the war in Iraq, for example, we're freeing the people of Iraq, Operation, what is called Iraqi freedom, right? But at the back end of it was greed. It was that wisdom was used to justify something that was basically based on greed. तदब्बुर की फसूकारी से मुहकम हो नहीं सकता जहां में जिस तमद्दुन की बिनाया सरमायादारी है. The spell of introspection can never strengthen. He says that, like, you can't strengthen and you can't make firm the introspective spell or the introspection if the world exists on the basis of capitalism, right? If the civilizations in this world are based on capitalisms, then you can't really bring in wisdom and introspection and strengthen them. At the end of the day, it just comes down to money, right? If there's more opportunity for money, then people will do whatever they do, and all the wisdom and all the introspection and all the intelligence and intellectual capacities will go out the window. And then another line which is often quoted, he says, at the end of the day, because look, you can have wisdom, you can have faith, you can have introspective capacities, intellect, But what's important is amal, is action, is that you take that and you bring it to action. So he says, amal se zindagi banti hai, not just ilm, not just faith, not just iman. In the Quran, right, you have amanu wa amilu salihat, right? You believe and then you do good deeds. So just belief isn't sufficient. That's the basic element. That's what's necessary prerequisite. But that produces what? Amal. That produces actions. So he's saying that amal se zindagi banti hai, jannat bhi jahannam bhi. Ye khaki apni fitrat mein na nuri hai na nari hai. Is action that makes this life heaven or hell. It's action that is required, that is meaningful. Otherwise, in our nature, this creature of dust is neither of light nor fire. Right? We have we have the capacity to go in one direction or the other, but what is going to make us, people of Jannat or Jahannam is going to be our actions. खरुश आमोज बुलबुल हो गिरा गुंचे की वाह कर दे कि तू इस गुलसितान के वा कि तू इस गुलसितान के वास्ते बादे बहारी है. He says, be loud like the nightingale, open the knot of flower buds. Like, speak out loud, be firm. For you are the spring breeze of this garden. You're the one that's going to bring, he's trying to, for the Muslims to think about this, that you are the one that's going to help people realize the importance of what is value that which is important. फिरुठी एशिया के दिल से चिंगारी मोहब्बत की जमी जो ला के अतलस कुबायाना ततारी है. That the spark of love has come from the heart of Asia once more. The earth has become running ground for the stain-cloaked Tartarians, right? बेया पैदा खरीदारस्त जाने ना तवाने रा फसस मुद्दत गुजार अफ्ताद बर्मा कारवाने ra. This is again Farsi line. He says, arise, for a buyer has come to our miserable life. The time for our caravan to depart has come after a long time. Right? He's saying, it's time to now rise up and it's time to now start doing that work that's necessary. The next whole stanza is in Farsi. I mean, my Farsi is not that strong, but I'll do my best. He says, Baya saqi nawai murghizar az shakhsar ahmad, bahar ahmad, nigar ahmad, karar ahmad. He says, come, O cupbearer, the song of birds has come from the branches. He's talking to the Saki. The spring is here, the beloved is here, the beloved is here, the peace is here. Kashid abre bahari khima andar wadi o sahara, sadai abashara az faraze kohusar ahmad. The spring cloud has pitched its tent inside the valley and the desert. The sound of the waterfall comes from the height of the mountains. Again, he's talking about like how things are moving, things are happening now. Sarat kardam tu ham kanun peshi saz de saki ki khil nagma pardazan qatar andar qatar amad. May he says, may I be sacrificed for you, O Saki. Bring back the old laws of benevolence. For singers of this song have come in large numbers. Like, people are ready once more. Kinara zahda bargiro beba khan na sagarkash. Pasas muddat aziz shakhe kohan bange hazar ahmad. Turn away the ascetics and drink this wine without any hesitation. Right? It's not time to be an ascetic. It's not time to now become get stuck in being a zahid. It's time for action. For after an age, thousand songs of the nightingale are heard from this old branch once more. بمشتاقاں حدیث خواجہ بدر ہونے ناور تصرف ہائے پنہانش بچشم آشکار آمد. Okay, he says, for the ones yearning, bring forth the traditions of the master of Badr and Hunain. Right, like, people are ready for this. So he's saying, oh Saki, bring back the same sunnah, the same traditions of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the master of Khwaja Badr Hunain, the master of Badr and Hunain, the two wars that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam fought. Tasarruf hai pinhanish b'chashme ashikar amad. Since its hidden powers have now become revealed to the seeking eye. Digar shakhe khalil az khun manam nak mi gardad babaze babazare muhabbat nakte ma kamil ayar amad. He says, the branch of Ibrahim has been watered by the vitality of our blood. Like, Muslims have given blood to this branch, and this branch is coming back to life. For our currency has been proven to be the perfect in the market place of love. Right? We have given, we have paid, so that these people, the current generation, can come out, prepared. Sare khake shahid bargahe lalami pasham कि खूनिश बानिहाल millate masazgar आमद. He's saying, I'm spreading the petals of tulips on the dust of martyrs, right? For their bloods have proven to be effective for the plants of the nation. So he's saying, I'm trying to put those tulips petals on there so that it can give rise again to flowers, right? And it can bring back life to the dead nation, to the plants of giving the analogy of the plant here. And the last line he's quoting from Hafiz Shirazi, he's saying, Bayata gul biafshanim wa maidar sagar and azim, falakra saqf bishkafim wa tarhe digar and azim. Come, friends, so we can spread the flowers and fill the containers with this drink. Let us split the roof of the heavens open and think about new ways of rebuilding it. Again, ending with the same hope that we talked about, that the idea that it's time now to learn from our past. It's time for us to work on ourselves, bring these things like yaqeen, focus on actions and amal, so that we can rise once more and we can bring our status back in this dunya. I mean, his lines still are valuable today, even though this was about 100 years ago. But what that requires is for us to work on ourselves. I think this is a very important message in all of Allama's poetry, that if you want to have the status of a believer, the status that the Muslims had, you have to bring about the internal qualities. What brought the Muslims down, the downfall of Muslim, was actually the problems that contained within their own characters, especially right after the Khulafa Rashidun, right? It started right then. So if we want to bring back that glory, if we want to bring back that value, then we have to start working on our own character and develop our own akhlaq. So I'll end with that. I'll go over to different streams here, see um, if there's any questions. I know people made a lot of comments while I was speaking, so I wasn't able to really pay attention to that. But if anyone has any questions, please do comment, and I'll go back and see able to if we're able to answer some of those. But again, someone previously asked how to read Alama's poetry, and how do we benefit from it. For me, it was going down at a deeper level, individually, right? For me to recognize that I have to think, um, I have to apply his lines of poetry into my own life. So I mean, we read so many lines today. Even if you took one line or two lines from it, and you give more deeper thought to it, and see how it applies to you and your life, then we can find a lot of benefit from this. So may Allah allow us to benefit from his poetry, inshallah. With that, inshallah, we'll end. Thank you so much for joining me today. Inshallah, we'll do more in the future, maybe smaller poems, so that it'll be easier for people to digest. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.